Hey guys, welcome back. Unit 11, Day 3, virtual lesson. This is something a little bit different. We call it the X game. This is actually a precursor for factoring a trinomial. And what it does is it allows us to practice our factoring of numbers in terms of things that will multiply to a certain number and add to another. So what we want to do here, if you notice these two signs, multiplication and addition. What I need to do is I need to find two numbers that are going to multiply to 8 and add to 6. So some of you might be good at factoring in your head. What you've probably seen teachers do, and I like to do this, is over on the side, make a little T-chart of all the factors of 8. So numbers that I know multiply to 8 would be 1 and 8, 2 and 4, and then that's it. So of these two numbers, or these two sets of numbers, I should say, which two multiply to 8? Well, they both do, and now add to 6. So really you just have to figure out which ones add to 6. Well, it'd be a 2 and a 4. So in this X game, all you have to do is put a 2 here and a 4 there. And that's how it works. It doesn't really matter what order you put these in. So let's try a couple. Okay, so now I've got two numbers that will multiply to 12 and add to 7. So again, what I like to do, you don't have to do this, but what I like to do over on the side, make a T-chart for 12. So I go through my factors. 1 and 12, 2 and 6, 3 times 4. So these are the only three sets of numbers that multiply to 12. Okay, well, I need the pair that add to 7. So 1 plus 12 gives me 13. 2 plus 6 gives me 8. 3 plus 4, there's your 7. So you know the combination has to be 3 and 4. Again, it doesn't really matter what order you put those in. Okay, numbers are getting a little bit bigger here. So again, what I want to do is I want to list the numbers that multiply to 20. Okay, and I would prefer you to do these numbers without a calculator. Obviously, you have the use of a calculator, but it's really good to work on these factors of numbers that are, I would say less than 50. So here I've got 1 and 20. 2 times 10. 3 does not go into 20, 4 times 5, and that's it. So in this particular case, I need the numbers to add to 9. Well, those two add to 21, those two add to 12, and they're the two that add to 9. So I'd want the 4 and the 5, and again, any order really doesn't matter. Well, it's going to get a little bit more challenging. Okay, of course, it always does, right? It's math. So now I need numbers that multiply to negative 12. So this is where it gets a little bit interesting. Because there's lots of different combinations now I could come up with. I could come up with negative 1 and 12. I could come up with negative 2 and 6. Well, how about negative 3 and 4? So you might be thinking, okay, well, that's pretty simple. We've done that before. I need which pair would add to a negative 1. Well, if I add these two, I get an 11. If I add those two, I get 4. If I add those two, I get 1. So none of those seem to work. But we've got to remember, well, hey, in this list here, the smaller numbers were negative and the bigger ones were positive. Well, what if I flip it around and make the bigger one negative? So these are the other set of numbers that multiply to negative 12. So I think you can see what's going to happen here. If I add these numbers, I'm just going to get the opposite of what I got up above. So this is the one that gives me a negative 1 right here. So the 3 has to be positive and the 4 has to be negative, because these two numbers here will multiply to negative 12 and they'll add to negative 1. So that's the combination that we want. Okay, another one with a negative. So I'm going to speed this up a little bit, because here's a trick. If you know the numbers multiply to a negative, their signs have to be different. If they add to the negative, that means the bigger of the two values has to be negative. So I like to list my factors smallest to biggest. So if I know the bigger one has to be negative, I'm going to put all the smaller ones over here as positive and the bigger ones as negative. So I've got negative 24. 1 and negative 24. 2 times negative 12. 3 times negative 8. And 4 times negative 6. So remember, what do these numbers need to do? They need to add to negative 2. Well, I'll go through this again. I know you guys probably see what the answer is, but 1 plus a negative 24, that would be a negative 23. That's not the one I want. 2 plus negative 12, well, that's negative 10. That's not the one I want. 3 plus negative 8, well, that's negative 5. Doesn't work. And like I said, I'm sure you guys have figured this out by now. The combination I want is a positive 4 and a negative 6. And I don't care where you put them in the box as long as the 6 is negative and the 4 is positive. Okay, so now we're at the point where I want you to try and come up with the numbers. Now, I don't care if you write this out, but maybe you want to do your T-chart. Some of these will be a little bit easier in the beginning. You just need to tell me what two numbers will go in the box there. Pause the video, try it, and then come back to the video. All right, so just a reminder, they have to multiply to 6. What are the only numbers that multiply to 6? 1, 6, 2, 3. So now you need the 2 that are going to add to 7. Well, obviously that's going to be 1 plus 6. It's going to be this combination here. So if you got 1 and 6 in any order, then you are correct. Great job. Let's move on to the next one. Okay, pause the video and see if you can come up with this solution. All right, so they have to multiply to 21. Only a few numbers multiply to 21. 1 and 21, 3 and 7. That's it, really. You need the combination that's going to add to 10. So pretty obvious here, it's going to be a 3 and a 7. Great job. Let's move on. A little bit more challenging here, all right? Because I picked a negative number, see what you can do, and then restart the video. Okay, so the shortcut that I like to apply here, and this is going to be very helpful when it comes to factoring again. Yeah, they multiply to a negative number. So I know the signs have to be different. They add to a positive. So that means the bigger value has to be positive. So when I list my factors, I like to put the bigger one on the right. It's got to be a negative and a positive. So I'm going to start with negative 1 and positive 18. Negative 2, positive 9. Negative 3, positive 6. Those are the only numbers that will multiply to negative 18 where the bigger one's positive. So now what do we need? We need the combination that when you add them will give you a 3. Well, that's going to be these two down here. So the two numbers that we want that satisfy multiplying to negative 18 and adding to a positive 3 is a negative 3 and a positive 6. Again, I don't really care what order you put those in as long as the 3 is negative and the 6 is positive. Okay, one more. Pause this, see if you can come up with the two numbers. All right, so they multiply to negative 16. I know the signs have to be different. And this time, the bigger one has got to be negative, because if they add to a negative number, the bigger of the two has to be negative. So I'm going to do it this way. 1 and negative 16. 2, negative 8. And this is kind of weird, 4 and negative 4. Those are the same. I need the pair that will give me a negative 6 when I add them. So 2 plus negative 8 equals negative 6. The two numbers we need, 2 and a negative 8. Again, in either order. Okay, last one. This one's really tricky. See what you can do and then come back. All right, so at first glance, this one seems kind of easy. You're like, oh yeah, that's not that bad. Multiply to 15. Well, that's 1 and 15 and 3 and 5, and that's it. But then you look here and say, well, wait a minute. Neither one of those pairs adds to a negative 8. So here's what we got to remember. Not only do two positive numbers multiply to a positive, but two negative numbers do as well. So I could pick negative 1 and negative 15, or negative 3 and negative 5. We don't see this a lot, but it does happen. So now I need the pair that add to a negative 8. That's going to be negative 3 and negative 5. Because if you think about it, and this is probably one of the trickier ones, negative 3 times negative 5 is positive 15. Negative 3 plus negative 5 is negative 8. So that's kind of a tricky one when you get numbers that multiply to a positive but add to a negative. You just have to remember they'll both be negative in that situation. Okay? All right, so that concludes this video lesson. Please either go back through and practice this, or if you feel confident, you could go ahead and do the Delta Math assignment. And again, please email me or contact me through Schoology or Braves link, or Brave Square, rather, if you have any questions. Thank you.